Leclerc wins from Piastri and Norris as both F1 championships hot up at Monza. Hey guys, welcome back to On Track GP. I'm Jamie Chambers, and what a fantastic race we had at Monza. I was left lost for words at Ferrari's strategy and again dumbfounded by Lando's first lap curse. But with a title fight getting ever closer and what looks like a potential three-way Constructors' Championship, Formula One is set for a fantastic end to the season. So have Lando Norris's title hopes been dented? Charles Leclerc took a stunning strategic victory on Ferrari's home soil by holding off Oscar Piastri at the Italian Grand Prix as Lando Norris finished third. Ferrari chose a daring one-stop strategy for Leclerc, improvising mid-race to vault him in front of the McLarens, who chose the conventional two-stop approach. That left Leclerc hanging on in the closing laps from the rapidly closing McLarens, and he just managed to resist them, winning by 2.6 seconds to send the Tifosi in the grandstands wild. This strategy, combined with Piastri's form, left Norris playing catch-up for most of the Grand Prix. In all honesty, he couldn't get back into the league battle, so settled for third, which reduces his deficit to Max Verstappen to 62 points in the Drivers' Championship. Still, another 8 points out of Verstappen's title lead keeps him on course for the title fight. But could the gap have been cut by more? And on top of that, McLaren are now just 8 points behind Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. Max Verstappen did limit the damage somewhat in a 6th place finish behind Lewis Hamilton. So looking at the Grand Prix as a whole, after the top three, Carlos Sainz finished 4th ahead of Lewis Hamilton, with Verstappen limiting the damage in 6th in front of George Russell. Sergio Perez was 8th and Red Bull retained the lead in the Constructors' Championship, but again by only 8 points from McLaren with 8 races to go. Williams' Alex Albon was 9th and Haas's Kevin Magnussen is in 10th. However, K-Mag is set to be banned for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix after his collision with Pierre Gasly. So let's look at the full race. After locking out the front row of the grid, McLaren looked on course for a 1-2 for half the race, with Piastri holding off Norris after the Australian passed the Briton around the outside of the second chicane on the first lap. Piastri's fair but aggressive move ended with Norris slipping down into third in the first stint of the race as Leclerc was able to slip into second by the exit of the corner. Although Leclerc started from 4th on the grid, he found himself in second after the opening lap as Russell locked up into turn 1 and Piastri surprisingly overtook Norris at the second chicane. Norris didn't expect the move, so lost the speed into the middle of the corner and Leclerc took full advantage. But Norris did undercut Leclerc, so McLaren were back in a 1-2 position, only for them to throw it away. After trailing Piastri and Leclerc through the first stint, Norris made his first pit stop in an attempt to undercut Leclerc, who responded on the following lap. But McLaren's strategy worked, vaulting Norris ahead of Leclerc, who initially complained on the radio. McLaren pitted Piastri to ensure he kept the lead, following their team rules of being fair to both drivers, and the race now seemed to be a fight for victory between the two McLarens. Papaya rules was mentioned more than once. But Norris began to struggle with tyre wear, slowly dropping back to 5 seconds behind Piastri and had to make a second pit stop on lap 32 with 21 to go, Piastri following him 6 laps later. There will be questions as to whether McLaren, worried about heavier front tyre wear than Ferrari, should have stayed out in front and gambled on their tyres lasting. Their decision to pit left Leclerc leading his teammate Carlos Sainz by just over 10 seconds, with Piastri chasing both down, and Ferrari decided to chance their arm. They knew a one-stop option would be difficult, especially with such an early first stop, but both drivers pulled it off. Both McLaren drivers pitted and Leclerc went for a one-stop strategy, doing 38 laps on the hard tyre. But while Sainz dropped back to 4th behind the two McLarens, Leclerc's lead was enough to keep him in front, to take one of the most stunning and unlikely victories of the year. The crowd cheered him across the line as he took his second Monza victory for Ferrari after his first in 2019. "It's an incredible feeling," said Leclerc. "I want to win at Monza and Monaco every year, and I have managed to do so. It is so special." McLaren have definitely been left frustrated from Monza. Norris and McLaren have still made progress in the championship but missed opportunities for more points against Verstappen and Red Bull. Despite being free to race, Norris was unhappy with Piastri's overtaking moves at turns 3 and 4, which set him back. Norris later made a mistake on lap 31, cutting the second chicane while chasing Piastri, leading to a second pit stop. Then race leader Piastri pitted for new hard tyres on lap 39, handing the lead to Leclerc with Sainz in second. Both McLaren drivers managed to overtake Sainz in the final 10 laps, but Leclerc remained out of reach. Ferrari, particularly Charles Leclerc, was praised for driving a better race. Piastri expressed his disappointment with the second place finish, saying it hurts a lot. He acknowledged that he did many things right during the race and was pleased with his pace and overall performance. However, the strategy which initially seemed risky turned out to be correct, making the second place finish all the more painful for the McLaren driver. At the end of the weekend, there are even more question marks at Red Bull. Unlike the rest of the top 10, both Red Bull started on the hard tyres rather than the mediums, a questionable choice from the point of view of many of the rival strategists. They fitted them again at the first pit on lap 22, only 6 after Piastri's first stop to come off the mediums. That meant Verstappen would have to stop again to fit the medium tyres, and worse than that, he had a slow stop, taking him 6 seconds. His frustration boiling over as he can be seen hitting the steering wheel in the pit lane. His race was always looking tricky from there, especially as Red Bull had lost their pace advantage over their rivals in recent races. The second Mercedes of George Russell won a battle with Verstappen's teammate Sergio Perez for 7th. Verstappen revealed that he and teammate Sergio Perez had a problem during the race which prevented the Red Bulls from running at full power. Moreover, he judges that in hindsight, his team's strategy was not the best. Essentially, the Red Bulls were unable to run their engines at full power, and that combined with a poor strategy choice left them vulnerable. And speaking of vulnerable, Verstappen's Champions lead is down to 62 points from Norris and 86 to Leclerc. And after yesterday, however unlikely, we have at least a 2-horse race for the driver's title. As for the constructors, Red Bull lead McLaren by the slimmest of margins, just 8 points. Realistically and based on form, McLaren should overtake the Red Bull in Baku, and with Ferrari only 39 points back, you can't count them out of the fight either. This should theoretically pile more pressure on Red Bull to do something about the Perez situation, or they do risk losing out on the Constructors' Championship to McLaren, or maybe even Ferrari. Alex Albon scored his first point since Williams introduced its first major upgrade of the season, narrowly beating K-Mag's Haas in a battle of one-stopping midfield cars. Magnussen copped a 10-second penalty for colliding with Pierre Gasly's Alpine at the second chicane and received 2 penalty points on his licence, which will now mean a race ban given his existing tally. Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin went with the 2-stop strategy but fell just a 10th of a second short of beating Magnussen's Haas to the final point. Although he started inside the top 10, Nico Hülkenberg had a horrible race to 17th, including getting forced off the track at Ascari by Daniel Ricciardo's RB, then colliding with the other RB of Yuki Tsunoda at turn 1, which forced Tsunoda to retire and earned Hülkenberg a 10-second penalty for causing a collision, as well as front wing damage to his Haas. Franco Colapinto finished 12th on his F1 debut for Williams, ahead of Ricciardo, who was penalised 5 seconds for that incident with Hulk. Esteban Ocon ended up 14th on a tough day for Alpine, ahead of teammate Pierre Gasly and Valtteri Bottas' Sauber in 16th. The Hulk still beat Zhou Guanyu and Lance Stroll to the flag, with Tsunoda the only retirement. So time for some key takeaways, some winners and some losers. So let's start with our key highlights. Leclerc's unexpected one-stop strategy led to victory. It caught out the McLarens, who again wasted an opportunity. McLaren's wasted opportunity meant they didn't capitalise to gain significant points on Red Bull. Red Bull's struggles continue, with the championship lead shrinking ever more. Ferrari's upgrade shows promise for future races and a potential Constructors' Challenge. Williams and Haas outperformed Aston Martin, leading to question marks about Alonso and Stroll's pace for the rest of the season. On to the losers of this weekend. McLaren. Despite a front row sweep and double podium, both drivers were left disappointed with the race outcome. They missed another opportunity when Red Bull weren't competitive. Red Bull struggled with pace, slow pit stops and an engine issue for both of them. Their championship lead has been reduced by a big margin. Lando Norris, outperformed by teammate Piastri, potentially weakening his case for future team orders, especially if papaya rules are going to continue. K-Mag received a 10-second penalty and 2 penalty points, resulting in a race ban for Baku. Fernando Alonso finished 11th due to high tyre deg, missing out on points again. RB, both drivers struggled, with Tsunoda's race ruined early and Ricciardo finishing 13th. George Russell lost podium opportunity due to his first lap incident and subsequent early lengthy pit stop. But enough of the negatives, onto the positive notes and the winners from this weekend. The biggest winner, Charles Leclerc, secured a stealth win with an impressive tyre management display, boosting morale for him and Ferrari. Victory at their home race potentially indicates that their new upgrade is working well and they could be competitive for the rest of the season. Alex Albon finished 9th with a one-stop strategy, outperforming expectations in his Williams. And speaking of Williams, Franco Colapinto. Solid F1 debut, finishing 12th from 18th on the grid with good tyre management. So there you have it, our full roundup of the Italian Grand Prix. Monza, the temple of speed, definitely delivered this year, but what do you think? Can Red Bull hold on this season? Can Lando catch Max? Do we have a 3-way title fight for the Constructors' Championship? As always, let me know what you think in the comments, and remember to like, comment, share and subscribe. Keep the pedal to the metal, and I'll see you in Baku.